Lavery.
Hi, Mr. Deputy Speaker. As Lady Hale warned earlier this week, the £350 million legal aid cuts in the bill would hit the poorest and the most vulnerable in society. She also said there's a well-known ironic saying that in England justice is open to all, like the writs. Courts are and should be the last resort, but there should be a last resort which is accessible to all, to the rich, to the poor alike. The big society will be the loser if everyone does not believe that the law is there for them. This sums up the current position very, very clearly. Mr. Deputy Speaker, the bill represents a further attack on the hard-working people and the most vulnerable people in society. It's a cobbled-together, dangerous coalition concoction of the most risky kind. I think it was the Justice Secretary who said in his contribution today that it was a mixture between a conservative dry and tough and soft wet and liberal. I'm honestly baffled by that. I don't know what it means, but it doesn't make too much sense at all. Should our justice policy not be wholly focused on the protection of the general public? Should it not be focused on properly punishing offenders and being on the side of the victim? And this bill presents more questions than it answers. It's too far, too fast, incoherent. The cuts are aimed at saving money and not reducing crime. It puts cutting costs ahead of what is in the best interests of the victims, in the best interests of reducing crime and punishing offenders. We see massive cuts in frontline police, in prison officers and to probation trusts. We see cuts to social welfare legal aid and leave the most vulnerable without any legal support whatsoever. It's a one-size-fits-all approach to the remodelling of the civil justice system, which threatens to render many areas of law unenforceable. The bill, Mr. Deputy Speaker, is unworkable with a departmental cut of 23%. It's hardly the rehabilitation revolution promised by the Justice Secretary. The Ministry of Justice budget is being cut by 23%. It means 10,000 fewer frontline staff in prisons and in probation. It's a 50% reduction in capital spending on the prison estate. The cuts are intended to save money around about £130 million with the reduction of 3,500 people in the prison population. And undoubtedly the planned cuts will create massive problems with regards to the future security of prisons, the conditions of the prison estate and the safety of prison officers and their capacity to maintain order within the prison estate themselves. It's an absolute nonsense, Mr. Deputy Speaker, for the government to speak of the plans to improve rehabilitation and cut reoffending while cutting the number of prison and probation officers, allowing the prison estate to be degraded. Mr. Deputy Speaker, there are three parts to the bill. There's the legal aid, the litigation and funding costs, and sentencing and punishment of offenders. It cannot just for a moment focus, like other honourable members have today, on the proposals in the Jackson report for PI cases, which was a precursor to this bill. And they were, as people accept here, a package of measures. It was the after-event insurance premium, the qualified one-way cost shifting to the defendant except in specific circumstances, the success fees paid by the claimant and referral fees were to be banned, and a new test for proportionality. The strong recommendations for reform were a package that needed to be implemented in full, and this bill does not deal with one of the most serious issues, which is the referral fees, which were proposed to be banned. There are no proposals for these referral fees, and one that can fail to have become aware of the furore in the last 2 or 3 days created by the revelation of the market and road traffic accident claims. It now seems difficult to see which intermediary is not in receipt of a fee for selling on a claim. This cannot continue and should result in the payment of referral fees being totally and utterly banned. Many people were caught by surprise by this week's revelations. by the insurance companies. People were shocked to hear that those profiting from the sale of personal information. Some of us have been complaining of this practice vigorously for many years. The failure to ban referral fees is yet another example of the double standards in operation here. There isn't any legitimate claimant should be deferred from bringing a claim with no win, no fee. No sensible lawyer would pursue a claim that they did not have reasonable prospects of winning. And make no mistake about it, Mr. Deputy Speaker, it presents a huge struggle between the access of rights for the injured person and the interests of those that represent or have a financial interest in the outcome for the employer or third party who injured them. It also affects the constituents of all members who find their ability to protect themselves and their families diminished by the savage cuts to legal aid. And what does the bill do to address the delay caused by the unnecessary cost of defending the undefendable? It removes the claimant's eligibility for legal aid to pursue a legitimate claim, leaving the weakest and the most vulnerable in a much weaker position than before, either needing to find initial investigation of their claim or not being able to commence proceedings. Among our other organisations, the trade union movement see that these changes will have a severe impact on health and safety. The employer who injures the employee will have no sanction placed on them if the employee is discouraged or prevented from pursuing a legitimate claim for injuries caused by the negligence of the employer. It's ironic that we discuss this today when today's announcement by the Health and Safety Executive announced that there's been a huge increase in workplace deaths, over 170 over the past year. The trade union movement have a long and proven history of protecting their members. This will be impacted upon adversely by the proposed changes in the bill. Mr. Deputy Speaker, many people have spoken about mediation this afternoon in this debate, and I think there's cross-party support for the suggestions which have been made, which aren't in the bill as it stands. The government's preferred option isn't suitable for all in terms of mediation, albeit an important tool in family breakdown. Both the Justice Select Committee and Family Justice Review have warned of the impact on vulnerable people, and specifically as to the potential impact in cases of domestic violence. These cuts to legal aid are likely to provide no real saving to the public purse, but will see courts struggle. Yes.
Make clear that mediation is not suitable in all cases, particularly those involving domestic violence, where legal aid will still be available.
I think if you had been earlier in the debate earlier, you might have heard that being discussed by members from both parties. The cuts to legal aid are likely to provide no real saving to the public purse, but will see courts struggle to cope as the weak and the vulnerable struggle to represent themselves. Is it not right, Mr. Deputy Speaker, that vulnerable and the weakest people in society have got the ability to access justice the same as those people with plenty of finance behind them, one way or another? And that's what's failing within this bill, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Deputy Speaker. We need to ensure fairness across the board. And yes, the bill, as has been explained for many people in this debate, is an utter shambles.